Hollow Earth conspiracy theories. For 1,000-foot deep city beneath the pyramids discovered by scientists. A city for 1,000 feet beneath the Great Pyramid. Radar scans show spiral shafts, resonance chambers, and something buried the world was never meant to see. If this is real, then history isn't just wrong, it's hiding something. Now stay with me, because what you're about to see isn't clickbait. It's a discovery that's forcing even the most skeptical scientists to reconsider the very foundations of human history. Where the Great Pyramid is not a tomb, but a gateway. What if the real mystery isn't on the surface, but in the geometric structures over a kilometer beneath it? And who built this buried city? Ancient Egyptians? Or someone who came long before? And near the end of this episode, I'll reveal one highly classified architectural detail about the Giza substructure that's been quietly omitted from mainstream records, and it could rewrite everything we thought we knew. But before we dive deeper, I have one request. If this kind of content sparks your curiosity, makes you question the narrative, or helps you see the ancient world in a new light, please share and subscribe to Alien Conspiracy Vault. We're on a mission to reach 1,000 awakened minds, and your support gives us the momentum to keep producing bold, high-quality investigations into the secrets of lost civilizations and hidden knowledge. Now take a breath, because what we're about to uncover might just reveal that we've only scratched the surface of our past. Chapter 1. The Grid Beneath the Stone. What if the pyramids weren't just monuments, but markers? Not above a grave, but above a system. A grid hidden in stone, encoded in silence. For centuries, archaeologists studied the Giza Plateau from the top down. From the shimmering golden tips of the pyramids to the shadowed corridors beneath the Sphinx. But they all assumed that what was visible was what mattered, that the secrets of Egypt lay in hieroglyphs, in chambers, in the stonework of the dead. What they missed was the ground itself. In 2023, a team of interdisciplinary researchers led by physicist Corrado Manga and radar engineer Filippo Biondi introduced a radical new idea that the Giza Plateau may sit atop a buried infrastructure far more sophisticated than any temple. Their scans, utilizing advanced synthetic aperture radar, SAR, enhanced with acoustic modulation, revealed not randomness, but geometry, grids, alignments, angles measured with precision that modern engineers struggle to explain. This wasn't erosion. It wasn't sedimentary illusion. It was a map, a lattice, extending more than a mile across and plunging thousands of feet into the earth. The data pointed toward rectangular zones beneath all three main pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, connected by long corridors with 90-degree turns, forming a network far too deliberate to be natural. The patterns weren't irregular. They formed what looked like a resonance matrix, a kind of harmonic foundation. Not just structural, but energetic. This raised a disturbing question. Were the pyramids built on top of an existing system? A system whose age we can't determine, whose purpose we can't decode. Ancient legends speak of a net beneath Giza, the so-called Web of Osiris, a mythical underworld network linking knowledge, energy, and immortality. For centuries, such myths were dismissed as metaphor. But the radar showed a lattice of grid lines intersecting at intervals consistent with the sacred geometry found in Egyptian temples. the golden ratio, square root 2, and the Pythagorean triangle. More strikingly, the density of underground anomalies increased near what is known as the Well of Osiris, long assumed to be a ritual shaft. But the new scan suggested it was not isolated. It was a node, a vertical access point that could extend hundreds of meters below what's currently documented, possibly interfacing with a broader subterranean architecture. If true, this would explain what has long puzzled geologists: the impossible weight distribution of the Great Pyramid. With over 6 million tons of stone, the structure should have sunken deep into the desert sand. Yet it stands firm. Why? Monge's team proposed a staggering hypothesis that the underground network functions as a frequency-dampening matrix, dispersing pressure through harmonic vibration. In other words, it's not just support, it's resonance engineering, a stabilizing field built into the Earth itself. This concept isn't without precedent. In megalithic sites like Tiwanaku in Bolivia or the Hypogeum in Malta, similar patterns of substructural voids and acoustic behavior have been documented. The idea that ancient builders created underground geometries to manipulate energy and matter is not new, but never before has it been linked to the foundational base of the world's most iconic structure. And then there's the orientation. Overlaying the subsurface radar maps with celestial charts revealed a disturbing synchronicity. The grid beneath Giza aligns, not loosely, but precisely, with star maps corresponding to Orion's belt Sirius and the ecliptic trajectory of Venus. These aren't surface alignments. These are subsurface echoes of the heavens, encoded in stone beneath our feet. The ancients may have believed in as above, so below, but what if they did more than believe? What if they built it? The implications are overwhelming. If the Giza pyramids were constructed to harmonize with a pre-existing energetic grid, then Egyptology, as we know it, is built on a flawed timeline. The pyramids may not be the beginning. They may be the interface, a surface terminal for a buried network far older, stretching beneath the Nile's silt and time's illusion. This isn't just an archaeological mystery. It's a challenge to our assumptions about civilization, memory, and how Earth itself might function as a living, resonant organism. And it's only the beginning. Chapter 2, The Sound That Shapes the Stone. The Earth speaks in frequency, but only now are we learning how to listen. Traditional archaeology has long relied on shovels and brushes, peeling away layers of soil like pages in a history book. But beneath the pyramids of Giza, something more elusive called for attention. Not artifacts, but harmonics. It wasn't what was buried, it was how it resonated. In early 2023, the Kofre project team made a bold move. They stopped treating light as the only medium of exploration and instead turned to sound. By transforming satellite radar signals into low-frequency acoustic waves, they developed a method not to see beneath the stone, but to hear it vibrate. The core of their breakthrough came from studying the behavior of granite. Most of the Great Pyramid's inner chambers and structural blocks are made of this dense stone, but granite isn't just strong, it's piezoelectric. When compressed or struck, it can generate an electrical charge. More importantly, it responds to vibration with remarkable clarity. What if the team asked, the pyramid wasn't just designed to stand the test of time, but to respond to it? What if every chamber, every shaft, every angle was tuned, not just architecturally, but acoustically, using deep penetration acoustic radar modeling? They began scanning not just for voids, but for oscillatory patterns. What they found was not noise. It was structure, frequencies echoing in harmonic waves, bouncing from chamber to chamber in cascading spirals. The very geometry of the pyramid was guiding the sound. This was not random resonance. It was designed. In the king's chamber, they recorded a persistent hum, a bass tone at 440 hertz, but layered with harmonic overtones rising toward the ceiling's granite beams. The dimensions of the room matched perfect Fibonacci ratios. The result was a standing wave, a frequency loop, as if the chamber was a tuning fork for the earth itself. But why? Ancient texts speak often of sound, not as art but as technology. In the pyramid text, the word Heka appears repeatedly, often translated as magic. It more accurately refers to resonant force, sound that alters matter, intention that moves through tone. Tibetan monks still use sound to resonate solid stone during rituals. In India, mantras are encoded with mathematical intervals designed to induce trance states and biological change. Indigenous shamans from South America to Australia speak of songs that open places, frequencies that unlock memory, not metaphorically but literally. Was this ancient knowledge embedded into Egypt's megaliths? Biondi, the radar engineer of the team, noticed that when acoustic signals were aimed toward the subterranean grid beneath the pyramid, the returning waveforms didn't just echo, they amplified, as though the earth itself was participating. The grid wasn't passive. It was reactive. More shocking was the discovery of nodes, precise locations where the resonance intensified dramatically, forming cymatic patterns in the return signal. Cymatics, the science of making sound visible, reveals how specific frequencies produce stable geometric patterns in matter. In these zones, the radar returned images resembling flower-like mandalas, like sacred geometry drawn in vibration. These weren't just echoes of chambers. These were engineered resonance fields. This revelation reframed the very idea of pyramid construction. Maybe the pyramids weren't built using sound, as many fringe theories have suggested. Perhaps that misses the point entirely. Maybe the pyramids were built for sound. The entire structure, from base to apex, could be a waveguide, a filter that shapes and channels vibration from the Earth's crust upward, harmonizing it with celestial rhythms. A resonance chamber, not for music, but for consciousness. Some believe this is pseudoscience. Others see it as a bridge between lost wisdom and modern physics. Because here's the thing: string theory, quantum field theory, and even cosmology now suggest that vibration underlies all reality, that particles are just notes, and the universe is a song still being sung. What if the ancients knew? And what if the pyramid was never silent, but has been singing all along? Chapter 3, The Tunnels that Defied Time. Beneath the shifting sands of the Giza Plateau, a hidden architecture spirals downward, not carved by erosion, nor mapped by dynasties, but by something older, more deliberate, and far more advanced. What began as a routine scan of anomalies near the base of the Khafre Pyramid soon unraveled into a discovery that shattered conventional scale. The research team, expecting perhaps a few unmapped voids, instead encountered 8 enormous vertical shafts, cylindrical in shape, each over 35 feet wide and plunging more than 2,100 feet into the earth. That's nearly twice the depth of the Empire State Building's height, dug into bedrock, not soil. No tools from a known timeline of Egyptian history could have achieved this. But the real shock wasn't their depth. It was their form. Each shaft, according to radar acoustics and signal analysis, bore a spiraling groove along its inner wall. Not random, but helical. A staircase? Perhaps, but not like anything seen before. The spiral followed the golden ratio, a mathematically sacred spiral found in nature, from galaxies to DNA strands. This was more than engineering. It was symbolic geometry in motion, and it matched patterns found in the Great Hypogeum of Malta, where underground chambers similarly followed spiraled acoustic paths. The similarity was not just visual, but functional. When scanned at different frequencies, these Egyptian shafts returned harmonic echoes that increased in pitch the deeper the signal traveled, as if the spiral itself was designed to modulate frequency, descending into them. Even virtually through data, felt like falling through a tunnel meant to transform, not just to move physically, but energetically, as if these structures were not passageways for bodies, but for consciousness. At the bottom of these shafts, the radar revealed the presence of 2 vast square chambers, each nearly the size of a football field. But they were not simply rooms. They appear to be receiving structures, junctions, where the 8 spiraling tunnels converged. Between them stood a third object, smaller, brighter, and radiating the most intense signal return recorded by the system. It was geometrically perfect, a cubic form, untouched by irregularity. This was no natural formation. Its energy signature resonated across multiple radar sweeps, and it sat at the nexus, exactly aligned between the 2 larger chambers. Was this a power node? A consciousness hub? A memory vault? The language of myth returned again. Stories of the Halls of Amenti, deep beneath the earth, where wisdom beyond time was hidden from unworthy eyes. Ancient texts spoke of guardians of the deep, gates of vibration, and stairways that descend to where light and memory sleep. For centuries, these were taken as allegory, but here they were: spirals, gates, chambers, energy patterns. And it didn't end there. When viewed from above, the positioning of these shafts formed a symmetrical mandala, a resonance grid, suggesting a system of energy collection and redirection. The team theorized that each shaft acted as both conduit and stabilizer, not unlike antennae, drawing in frequency from above and from the earth itself. If this was correct, then the entire complex wasn't a tomb or even a city. It was an interface, a bridge between dimensional layers. Stone, frequency, consciousness converging. Mainstream Egyptology had no explanation for shafts of this depth or this function. No historical record. No known tools. No plausible purpose. But the mythos did. In Sumerian, Egyptian, and Hindu traditions, the journey to the underworld is always spiral, always downward, inward, and guarded by energy. In the Emerald Tablet, Thoth describes descending through deep chambers of silence, through serpent-shaped passageways, to reach the flame of knowledge. Could these tunnels be the physical embodiment of that myth? Not metaphor, but technology disguised as story? Biondi later said that analyzing these radar signals was like reading a forgotten language made of light and sound. Manga described it more poetically, calling it a map of the mind, carved into the planet. And perhaps that's exactly what it was. If these tunnels are real, and all evidence suggests they are, then everything we know about Egypt's past must be reframed. Because no civilization should have been able to build this. And yet, someone did. Chapter 4, The Halls of Mind and Memory. Beneath 2,100 feet of silence, where sunlight has never reached, lie two massive voids, not empty but intentional. And at their center, a structure pulsing with symmetry, geometry, and something else. The initial scans revealed what appear to be twin rectangular chambers, buried directly beneath the vertical shafts. Each chamber measured 260 feet across, dimensions eerily close to ancient units used in Egyptian temple design. But these were not burial vaults. There were no signs of sarcophagi, ramps, or funerary architecture. Instead, what the data showed was a system, integrated, connected, and unmistakably engineered. Between the two large voids sat a smaller, central structure. Its shape was cubic, its signature unique. The return signal lit up with a brilliance not seen anywhere else in scans. The team called it the core, not because they knew its purpose, but because everything pointed to it. 8 massive helical shafts fed directly into it. The chambers flanked it like wings. And at its very base, signal harmonics intensified into a singular frequency spike, a resonance peak, as if the structure itself was tuned to respond only when the correct vibration was present. It was here that physicist Corrado Manga made his most radical claim. He suggested the core might not be a structure in the traditional sense, but rather a storage device, not for gold, not for bodies, but for consciousness. The team turned to ancient myth again and found unsettling parallels. In Egyptian lore, Amenti was not just a realm of the dead. It was a library of souls, a metaphysical zone where memory, identity, and divine essence were stored. The Emerald Tablet of Thoth speaks of deep chambers beneath the earth, where the mind of the ancient sleeps, and doors that open only with the vibration of the heart. Modern scientists might scoff at such language, but resonance is a form of keying. In physics, everything has a natural frequency at which it responds, harmonizes, or shatters. A singer's voice can break glass, not because of strength, but because of perfect match. What if these chambers weren't meant to be opened by force or excavation, but by a state of mind? Within the core geometry, the team found proportions echoing the flower of life, a sacred symbol found etched into ancient sites around the world. When run through cymatic simulation, turning frequency into visual form, these same proportions produced identical patterns. Was this intentional? More than 3,000 years ago, the Egyptian god Thoth was said to have sealed the keys of life inside the earth, waiting for a time when man was ready to receive them. Could these chambers be part of that vault? A mechanism that responds not to tools, but to frequency codes generated by the human body. EEG studies show that the heart and brain emit measurable electromagnetic waves, unique to each person but shiftable through breath, intention, and state of consciousness. In other words, the human being itself may be a key when calibrated. The concept is radical until you consider the alternative. How else could structure this massive, this deep, remain hidden for millennia without collapsing, decaying, or revealing itself? Its survival implies not only architectural mastery, but purposeful concealment, like a dormant server waiting for activation. And then there's the silence. No hieroglyphs, no inscriptions, no decorative art, just resonance, angles, and void. The chambers are pure function, designed to do something, not to show something, which raises the ultimate question. What were they meant to preserve? Not data, not artifacts, but perhaps a state of being, a record of consciousness, a backup of memory, or even, if one dares to imagine, a seed of intelligence placed deep within the earth, not to be found but to be remembered. If the pyramids were designed as beacons, these halls may be the core memory banks, the forgotten vaults of civilization that understood reality not just as matter and motion, but as pattern and perception. This wasn't about death. It was about continuity. And the halls still wait, silent, massive, and humming, beneath the stone and the centuries, awaiting the right vibration to wake them up. Chapter 5, The Mathematics of the Immortals. Numbers do not lie. And in ancient Egypt, they were never merely tools, they were keys. For decades, archaeologists have admired the proportions of the Great Pyramid, its golden ratio symmetry, its alignment to true north, its encoding of Earth's equator and polar circumference. But none of that compares to what the Khafre project found beneath it, because buried in the depth below Giza lies a structure not only vast, but precisely measured, as if space itself had been scripted by a mind fluent in sacred code. The vertical shafts descending into the earth measured precisely 648 meters deep. That number alone might mean nothing, until you realize it is exactly double 324, a number that recurs throughout ancient Egyptian architectural mathematics. 324, for instance, is one of the key dimensions encoded into the valley temple near the Sphinx. Double it, and you have 648, the depth of the hidden chambers. Coincidence? The deeper the team looked, the less likely that became. The pyramid complex, above and below, seemed to echo a systematic design, using values drawn not from arbitrary measurement, but from a library of cosmic harmonics. Take the number 432. In Vedic cosmology, it represents the number of thousands in a yuga or cosmic age. In music, 432 Hertz is often called the natural tuning frequency, believed to resonate more harmoniously with the universe and the human body than the modern 440 Hertz. Now here's the enigma. The central temple attributed to Khafre, one of the structures nearest the scan anomalies, has symbolic number alignments that form 2, 3, 7, 1. Apply the sigma function, the mathematical sum of its divisors, and you get 432. Once might be chance, twice pattern, but the subterranean chambers? Their length, when measured diagonally, also encodes that same 432 frequency. Manga and Biondi realized they weren't just scanning architecture. They were decoding a vibrational algorithm. The ancients hadn't just built with stone. They'd embedded frequency logic into design itself. Pythagoras once said, "All is number." To the Egyptians, that meant more than measurement. It meant intention. Every unit of length, be it the royal cubit, the palm, the digit, was tied to celestial cycles, planetary harmonics, and the movement of stars. The pyramid's base perimeter divided by its height yields a number close to 2 pi. Its internal shafts point to specific stars like Sirius and Orion's belt during their positions circa 10,500 BCE. These are not decorations. They are calibrations, alignments meant to interface with a cosmic system. The underground grid beneath Giza reflects the same logic. Its corridors move at right angles, but its core vibrates in spirals, a union of the linear and the harmonic, the structural and the symbolic. Even the layout of the buried complex mirrors the design of ancient mandalas, sacred blueprints used in Hinduism and Buddhism to focus consciousness and depict the geometry of the divine. The question is no longer how the ancients knew this. It is, why did they encode it? The answer may lie in what modern physicists now understand. The universe is not built from matter, but from vibration. In string theory, every particle is a tiny string vibrating at a specific frequency. Geometry, music, and consciousness are not separate. They are facets of the same wave field. And if that's true, then what lies beneath the pyramids is not a tomb, nor a city. It is a tuned instrument waiting to be played, not with strings or keys, but with awareness. A structure designed to resonate with those who remember how to listen, how to feel numbers not as abstractions, but as frequencies of being. The ancients didn't fear death. They sought continuity through pattern, a continuity that may still echo beneath the stone in chambers of silence, where mathematics becomes memory, and memory immortality. Chapter 6, As Above, So Below. The ancients lived beneath a canopy of stars, but they did not merely observe the sky. They mirrored it. The principle as above, so below is perhaps the most enduring axiom of the Hermetic tradition. But for the builders of the Giza complex, it was not poetry, it was architecture. From the very beginning, Egyptologists noted the alignment between the 3 major pyramids and the belt of Orion. The offset, the angle, the spacing, all corresponded. But now, with the Khafre Project discovery of subterranean structures beneath the plateau, that mirror appears not just celestial, but interdimensional, because what lies beneath may be more than foundation. It may be reflection. The radar scans revealed a geometric network extending from the base of each pyramid downward and outward in patterns that, when charted, resembled celestial constellations, but not merely in shape, in position, distance, and harmonic ratio. Khufu mirrored Alnitak, Khafre mirrored Alnilam, Menkor mirrored Mintaka, and now, beneath them, the tunnels and chambers formed a second reflection, rotated and inverted like the shadow of the sky beneath the earth. The Egyptians believed the soul traversed 3 realms after death. Rostau, the visible world of sacred monuments. Amenti, the hidden world of passage and transformation. And decode, the celestial dimension, the ninth sky where the soul became light. What the Kofre team had discovered may be a physical expression of this metaphysical map. Rose-style is Giza's surface, stone and sunlight. Amenti is the underworld, vaults and silence. Decode is the mirror above, the star map encoded in the void. These were not just religious beliefs. They were encoded instructions. The pyramid in this light was not a tomb, but a gateway. One that functioned only when all three realms were aligned: the monument, the grid, and the sky. Consider the shafts inside the Great Pyramid. They're not random. Each aligns to a star. One to Orion's belt, another to Sirius, others to Thuban and Kochab. Stars associated with resurrection, ascension, and transformation. Now imagine those same shafts not only pointing up, but anchoring down from the apex to the Earth's core, from the stars to the soul. If the above and the below are harmonized, then the pyramid becomes more than symbolic. It becomes functional, a device of resonance, memory, and perhaps even dimensional passage. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of star walkers in the BA, the soul's aspect that can move freely through realms. The pyramid, according to the Book of Coming Forth by Day, was a ladder of Ra, a stairway of light through which the soul returns to its source. What if that ladder wasn't metaphor, but a calibrated system, where the geometry of the monument, the frequencies of the earth, and the alignment of the stars formed a unified field of transition? The Hall of Two Truths, a judgment chamber in the afterlife, was described as being entered through harmonic gates. Light and sound determined the soul's readiness. Weightlessness wasn't physical, it was vibrational alignment. And now, from beneath the pyramids, we find shafts spiraling like DNA, resonance grids shaped like mandalas, and chambers tuned to vibrate with cosmic frequencies. It was never about death. It was about transmutation. From form to field, from body to beam, from earth to star. The phrase "as above, so below" takes on new meaning. It is no longer a mystical abstraction. It is a blueprint. What we call myth may in fact be manual. What we dismissed as legend may have always been signal. And the pyramids, those eternal sentinels of stone, are perhaps not remnants of a lost civilization, but resonant nodes in ongoing communication, placed there to outlast cataclysm, conquest, and forgetting. They are still aligned, still echoing, still waiting. Chapter 7. The Denial and the Dogma. Every age has its guardians, but not all of them protect the truth. Some protect the narrative. When news of the subterranean discoveries beneath Giza surfaced in late 2023, the reaction was not excitement. It was rejection. Immediate, aggressive, and public. Leading the backlash was Dr. Zahi Hawass, arguably the most recognizable figure in Egyptology, former Minister of Antiquities, and gatekeeper of Giza's official story. He dismissed the Kofre Project's findings as fake science, branding the researchers delusional at best or opportunists at worst. Others followed. Academic journals refused follow-up submissions. Mainstream media labeled it a hoax, and respected radar experts claimed that no technology, especially not satellite-based acoustic conversion, could penetrate 2,100 feet of bedrock and return images of usable resolution. But that's not what the COFRE project was doing. Their method didn't rely on traditional ground-penetrating radar. They used multi-orbital interferometry, combining data from two synchronized satellites observing the Earth from different angles. These satellites generated interferometric synthetic aperture radar, NSAR, readings, which were then processed through sonic translation algorithms. This allowed them to read geological densities through vibrational absorption patterns, not just visual bounce backs. To a physicist, the method was sound. To the establishment archaeologist, it was heresy because if the data was right, the timeline was wrong, the tools were missing, and the story, so carefully curated for over a century, would collapse. The question isn't whether the findings are valid. The question is, why were they feared? History has seen this before. In the 1870s, when Heinrich Schliemann claimed he had discovered Troy, scholars mocked him for following Homeric myths. In the 1920s, when Carter uncovered Tutankhamun's tomb, many experts denied it existed at all. In 1994, when the ruins of Göbekli Tepe emerged in Turkey, showing monumental architecture 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, textbooks had to be rewritten. In each case, myth had outrun method, and so the myth was ignored until stone proved it real. But the denial runs deeper than skepticism. It is structural. Archaeology is tethered to institutions, museums, universities, ministries, all of which depend on a stable, linear narrative of human development, one where complexity emerges slowly, technology evolves in steps, and ancient people remain within a boundary of manageable intelligence. The Giza underground shatters that boundary. A civilization capable of spiral-carved shafts over half a mile deep, resonance-aligned chambers, and vibrational geometry doesn't just tweak history, it overwrites it. It suggests knowledge was once unified, where science, spirit, and symbol were not in conflict, but in collaboration. And that's not just uncomfortable for scholars. It's threatening, because if ancient Egypt and perhaps other civilizations access a form of technology tied to consciousness, geometry, and resonance, then today's reductionist models of history and physics must be reevaluated, not just academically, but existentially. To admit that truth is to admit that we are not the pinnacle, but the recovery, that our present is not the summit of knowledge, but its aftershock. So the defense mechanisms of academia kick in. Terms like pseudo-archaeology, confirmation bias, and anomalous data become weapons, not of science, but of preservation. And yet, the COFRE team persisted. Their radar had successfully mapped tunnels under the Sasso Laboratory in Italy and the Mosul Dam in Iraq. Their data cross-referenced from multiple satellites. They released all methodologies, open source, and still they were dismissed. Why? Because what they found wasn't just data. It was disruption. It threatened not only the story of Egypt, but the story of ourselves. And deep beneath the sand, that story continues. Unwritten, unacknowledged, but undeniably real. Chapter 8, The Blueprint of the Forgotten. There's a pattern beneath the dust, not of bricks or bones, but of intent, A blueprint traced across continents, across ages, and across forgotten minds. The structures beneath Giza, spiraling shafts, harmonic chambers, and vibrational cores, might seem unprecedented, but only if viewed in isolation. When examined as part of a broader map, they become something else entirely. One node in a global lattice. Because Giza is not alone. Thousands of miles away, in the Cappadocian Plateau of central Turkey, the underground city of Derinkuyu was discovered by accident in 1963. A man renovating his basement broke through to a world carved into volcanic stone. Multiple levels descending deep into the earth, complete with ventilation shafts, chambers, and sealed stone doors. Like Giza substructure, Derinkuyu features spiral descent paths, choke points, and geometric planning. And like Giza, no records tell us who built it, only that it was functional, advanced, hidden. Farther east, beneath the Himalayan foothills, lie the Ajanta and Ellora caves in India, some chiseled into perfect symmetry, with impossible interior acoustic properties. In the Andes, Chavindahuantar, a 3,000-year-old complex in Peru, hold beneath a maze of underground tunnels that modulate sound, causing those who walk through to hear frequencies they cannot explain. And in Malta, the hypogeum of Halls of Amenti features a chamber that resonates at 111 hertz, a frequency modern neuroscience now links to altered states of consciousness. These sites were separated by oceans, by language, by time, and yet they resonate with one another. Literally, many of them include spiral paths descending into Earth, chamber networks aligned to constellations, geometries based on Fibonacci sequences, and sacred ratios, acoustic designs that amplify human voice or specific tones, absence of historical records describing how or why they were built. This is not coincidence. This is infrastructure of a kind we've never been taught to recognize. The COFRE team began layering the underground scans of Giza over other ancient blueprints. Shockingly, the grids aligned, not in dimension, but in principle. Where Giza had its core, Derinkuyu had its nexus. Where Halls of Amenti had harmonic chambers, so too did the buried chambers beneath Kafir. Where Ajanta had geometric codes, Giza had frequency corridors, different regions, different materials, but identical logic. This pointed toward a lost knowledge system, a kind of planetary language rooted in resonance, geometry, and consciousness modulation. The ancient Egyptians referred to this kind of hidden architecture as part of the Sifek Bari, the sacred scroll of celestial pattern. Some esoteric traditions believe this refers not to a text, but a grid, a frequency blueprint encoded into Earth itself. Thoth, the god of wisdom and measurement, was said to have dispersed this knowledge across the world after a great cataclysm. Atlantis to Egypt, Mu to Mesoamerica, Lemuria to the Himalayas. What if these stories weren't mythology, but logistics, a disaster recovery protocol? A way to encode knowledge, not in books, but in stone and resonance, so it could survive even if memory did not. In this light, the underground city beneath Giza is not a freak anomaly. It is a survivor, part of a wider system of planetary vaults, designed to withstand floods, fire, or forgetting. And we, in our modern age of metal and silicon, maybe the latecomers, stepping into a theater already scripted, walking atop cathedrals of memory we don't even see. The Kofre project concluded that these sites were not made for the people of the past. They were made for the people of the future. Us. Because only now, when frequency geometry, neuroscience, and satellite imaging converge, can we begin to decode them. The blueprint was never truly lost. It was just buried, not under rubble, but under assumption. And now, as the ground whispers back through radar and resonance, the message is returning. We are not the first civilization to rise. We may not be the last, but we are the ones chosen to remember.